JD from Locked On Sharks is with us here, and I got to say, JD, you use the term fun and frisky not too much, but a lot. I really like that term. I feel like it works of what you're hoping to see from the Sharks as they turn the corner and become this evolution. I do think that this past year, we started to see fun and frisky, and the hope is you just get more of that next year. Am I close on that?
Yeah, I think I have a working theory of where teams are at in their life cycle, right? And I think the Sharks they're knocking on the door, or at least they're peeking into the fun and frisky phase. And you can look at Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith. They are fun to watch. When they're on the ice, the Sharks tend to be a little bit more frisky. And this doesn't mean I think the Sharks are a playoff team next year, but they're just more watchable, which is a huge improvement from what we saw 23-24, where it was a slog most nights just to kind of get through the game. So that they give this team, anytime that anything Will Smith or Macklin Celebrini, they're just more fun and better vibes and just better energy. And yes, a more competitive team, which is what we're hoping for.
To your point, we were chatting before recording this earlier that they have made an improvement from last season, or I should say 2 years ago, to now this past regular season. What to you was the biggest step forward year to year? And obviously, I think 71 and 2 are a huge part of that. But from a team perspective, how did they change? How did they improve?
I think just being a more competitive team night in and night out. This team in the 23-24 season, they just got blown out too many times.
Yeah.
How many times is this team losing by 3 goals or more? I think it was 35 times in the 23-24 season of this team. So that's almost half your games that you've lost by more than 3 goals. This season, they had 35 games that they were within 1 or 2 goals that they lost by, which is a huge improvement from going where we were in 23 and 24 to 24-25 season. And that's a lot because of Celebrini and Smith and what the contributions that they did. And plus, William Eklund in year 2, Tyler Toffoli and kind of being the fun uncle. And you see just the direction of this team and how it's improving. And I think that's huge for this team. And just the little things, right? The goal differential, 23-24 minus 150, one of the worst teams that we have seen in modern NHL history. This year, they were still last, right? Minus 105. That's a huge jump. That's if you listen to Locked On Sharks recently, that is the 6th best jump in the NHL compared to year to year. You have the Caps. Caps are up there, they have a plus 93 jump. And that's why they're the best team in the East, right? The Blue Jackets, huge jump, just missed the playoffs. The Ducks, huge jump. You saw the jump that I think the Sharks are trying to replicate next year. I think as they start to kind of build and reset from where this team was a couple of seasons ago, you're seeing those big jumps and the kind of those checking the boxes. And that doesn't say that there's still work to be done, because there's still plenty of work to be done. This team is trying to head into being a competitive and hopefully be in the next Tampa Bay Lightning or the next Colorado Avalanche, where you're just that team every year. But you're starting to see those baby steps taken right now.
I think the casual Sharks fan can understand the main themes and storylines of this past season, and Celebrini and Smith and Ryan Warsofsky, the brand new head coach, and Toffoli and Eklund taking some strides. Let's go a layer deeper than that. What are the stories and players that you watched this past season that deserve a little bit more attention, but maybe were under the radar?
I think you have to point to Colin Graf, a guy who the Sharks, signed out of college. And they let him marinate in the AHL with Andrew Podorowski, who I've said Tyler Toffoli is the best signing the Sharks made this offseason. Andrew Podorowski was the second best signing the Sharks made this offseason. By giving the Barracuda a legitimate number 1 center, the guy just went on to lead the AHL in scoring despite missing the last 8 or 9 games of the season. But still, you found a legit guy that you can pair some of your younger players around. Guys like Colin Graf, that you have Podorowski, who's a veteran, knows exactly what he's doing, and he's very good at it, right? Yeah. Podorowski got some time in the NHL, right? You kind of gave him, throw him a little bone there, let him get some NHL time, gets that NHL stipend. But still, his job, he knows he's trying to kind of change the culture in the Barracuda, help this team win, that team that hasn't won in a while. You put him with Colin Graff. Look at Colin Graff go, right? Got a lot of experience playing number one minutes down there in the AHL. Got a lot of experience on the penalty kill, where he's become a penalty kill wizard. And now in the NHL, he looks like a legitimate NHL player. Like, you can pencil him, I think, into the opening night roster for the 24 or 25-26 season,
Right.
because of the time that he spent down there. And be that glue guy, whatever you need him to be, right? You need him to forecheck, you need him to play on the penalty kill, you need him to score some goals. He started potting some goals at the end of the season. I think Colin Graff is going to be a huge story for a guy that you basically got for free.
Yeah, completely. I mean, and that's been how the Sharks have impressed most, I think, is turning things over, but also making some slick moves even beyond the obvious moves, right? You're going to get a number one, two first-round draft picks this year, two second-round draft picks this year. Same scenario for next year, but it's not just the high picks. It's all of those other maneuvers, too, that I think matter most. For example, how they got Yaroslav Askarov at the very beginning or middle to end of last summer. And I think that's another storyline. You know, we didn't see a lot of Askey this year at the NHL level, and then he's been hurt for a lot of 2025 so far. But I think that's another player that, you know, I don't want to ink him in on the starting lineup for opening night next year, but I do feel like that's somebody who's definitely going to get a bigger and more expanded look and role next year for sure. Don't you think?
Oh, 100%, right. I think if he's not opening night, it's going to feel like a huge disappointment if he's not on the NHL roster. But
or something else happened, right? Like somebody else, or who knows, right? That's the interesting part. Yeah, go ahead.
But still, like, if Askarov, though, I think just the improvement in goaltending, right? You saw, like, with Mackenzie Blackwood last, the 24 season and before he got traded, just how much better the team played with Blackwood back there. And you're hoping that Askarov can just add some stability in that. How many kind of goaltender is that, against Gorgiev and all these other guys who've been rotated in and out as the Sharks have kind of churned this roster. But hopefully having some stability and a guy that you feel like is going to be here for a long time in Askarov. And if you can get just anywhere close to league average goaltending from Askarov, I think this team's going to make a massive, massive jump. Again, I'm not pushing for the playoffs. I'm looking at that Ducks type of run where you go from picking 1, 2, or 3 in the league to now you're picking 9th or 10th, and you feel like you've made a big jump. And if Askarov can provide that, and we've heard Mike Greer say we need to improve the defense, then you're starting to kind of get things on track here. But Askarov and, the Sharks are going to have to go out and find a 1B or a backup or however they want to label it, but find another goaltender to kind of pair with Askarov. And then, right, maybe they kind of steal page from the Calgary Flames, where begin the season, we're going to split the load really evenly between Dustin Wolf and Vladard. And then as Wolf got better and better and more comfortable, and then by the end of the season, it was Dustin Wolf's net, and they had to drag him out of there. Again, they were trying to make the playoffs, but still, like, I could see Askarov kind of doing the same thing where maybe you start very 50-50 to start the season, but then Christmas time or Olympic break next year, it's just Askey's net from then on out.
And to your point earlier about Askarov and maybe kind of pacing him into next season, I actually think looking back at this past season, it was one of the good reasons we didn't see a lot of him. The team struggled defensively, and I don't know that you want to put a rookie entry into the NHL as a goalie with that type of defense in front of you. It just complicates who he is, where he's at. I think you want to put him in a situation to succeed, I guess is my point. And hopefully next year is that. I do think there have to be changes for this team one way or another without the puck.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and Mike Greer's kind of run the playbook already. I know the Askarov trade happened afterwards, but he said they've been working on a trade for a while, right? Look what he did for the Barracuda last offseason.
Yeah.
He went out and got Jimmy Schultz, one of the best AHL defensemen. Lucas Carlson, who's coming off an injury, but one of the best two-way defensemen. You had Muka Madulin, who's going to kind of, expected to maybe play some AHL time, maybe not. Jack Thompson, like, he went out and got kind of revamped this Barracuda defensive group. And then you had, of course, Luca Cagnoni pop off and do awesome Cagnoni things that a lot of us were expecting. But I don't think even myself, a big Cagnoni Hive guy, was expecting what we got from Cagnoni this season. But he went out and he improved this defensive unit, knowing that I'm probably going to get the big fish in Askarov, and I don't want to put him in a bad situation.
Right. Right. No, I agree with you
Does he
totally.
do it again this offseason and go again? I know he's saying he doesn't want to sign long-term guys, but I have a feeling Mike Grier's got a couple things up his sleeve here.
Yeah, and that brings me to a couple more things I wanted to touch on here. Free agency is going to be pretty different for the San Jose Sharks and their fan base. Usually it's, all right, there's a cap. We're getting close to it. We don't have a lot of room. This year, for the first time in like forever, they're going to have to spend a decent amount just to get to the floor. And that's just the way that the players and rookie salary structures are. So they're going to have to bring in somebody interesting, or at least somebody of that pay scale who is interesting.
Yes. No more coupon shopping for the San Jose Sharks. We don't have to do those days of the coupon shopping. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have to spend at least like $20 million to kind of get comfortably over the cap this offseason. And where that money is spent, there's a laundry list of things I think the Sharks are going to have to, like we mentioned, right? You got to find another goalie.
Yeah.
They probably need, I know the plan is for Will Smith to be the second C next year, but I would still like to have some insurance just in case maybe Will Smith's not quite ready. Like to have another guy between Wenberg and, player X who can play center in case Will Smith's just not quite ready for that, which is a very realistic thing that could happen with a 20-year-old player.
Remember how long it took Tomas Hertl to evolve from winger to centerman? And like Will Smith, I think is well ahead of that already. We'll find out, but it's okay if it's not an easy, like Macklin jumps right in there and does it. Not everybody does that.
Yeah. Yes. There's a reason why Macklin Celebrity is Macklin Celebrity. He's a very special player, but I think though, like trying to find some more scoring, trying to revamp the defense, and you're gonna have to there's a laundry list of things for Mike Grier to do this offseason, as you're still, again, you want to do this the right way, and you don't want to kind of pigeonhole yourself where maybe you sign a bunch of veteran guys and then all of a sudden you're just kind of one of those teams in the middle where nothing really fits very well. So I think Mike Grier is going to be smart. I do expect Mike Grier to be very smart about his offseason signings, but they just have to spend more money because again, when you have 15 ELCs on your roster, you got to spend some money somewhere. And that's just how it feels right now with the Sharks, with so many young players and so many guys on cheap contracts. They are going to have to spend that money somewhere. And even, they don't really have a lot of free agents that you feel like are warrant or might be around for it. And you look at the potential William Eklund extension that's not even going to kick in until the following season. So yeah, there's going to be plenty of stuff for Mike Grier to do.
When you think about the next captain of the San Jose Sharks, does it need to happen this next season? Can they do a 4 alternate situation? Do you have a preference in mind? I think this is an important conversation for the team and the players inside that room and the coaching staff and the front office. Certainly they'll put a lot of thought and effort into this, but it's almost like a fun conversation to have on the outside because there's a couple different options here, and maybe there are some easier ones to see, but there's like no bad options here. There's a lot of good options. It's more like which way do they go with it? How would you prefer this go?
I mean, it's tough, right? Because we know the end game, it's going to be Macklin Celebrity at some point, right? We all know it's going to be Macklin Celebrity at some point.
Yes.
And it would be very hard for me to envision a world where it's not Macklin Celebrity. Maybe it's like the Avs where it's Landeskog, it's the captain, but we all kind of feel like it's Nathan McKinnon's the captain. Even I know he's been missing for the last couple of years.
Right.
Congrats on Landeskog for getting back. But still, we all feel like it's going to be Macklin Celebrity at some point in time. And maybe it's Tyler Toffoli for a couple of seasons, right? And then maybe he's like a season or two, and then he does the thing where it's like, okay, it's my, Macklin's the future, it's Macklin's team now. And as he kind of grows into the role and kind of gracefully bows down and gives it to Macklin, that could be a path. But I mean, it's tough because like you look at like Crosby, right? And Macklin is the Crosby-Macklin comparison has been made a bunch of time. Like Crosby had the C at like 19, right? Like it's if the kid's ready for it, he's ready for it. And again, like it's not like Celebrini hasn't basically been a professional since he was the age of 12, been hanging around professional athletes since he was the age of, I wouldn't be like, you could tell me they don't do as captain and they just kind of run the 4 alternates, and I would be okay with that.
Right.
You could tell me Toffoli is the captain for a couple years, and as he kind of grooms Celebrini to be ready to be the captain, I'd be okay with that. Or they just throw the thing on C and just get it over with, and I'd be okay with that either way. I think it's just getting Celebrini ready to it, and who the alternate captains are going to be. I think it's going to be interesting as well. Like Eklund, who's been a big piece and kind of that first foundational piece, and has really kind of stepped up with his leadership. Does he earn an A this offseason? And as again, you're trying to kind of put more of a focus on some of these younger guys as they step into bigger roles. Does Celebrini get an A if he doesn't get a captainship? Like, who kind of are your next A's on this team, as they, a lot of these guys who wore A's before, like Granlund and Cunnin, like those guys are gone now. And I think there is a void in some of those spots. And I think it might be time for some of these young players to start to kind of a bigger voice in the locker room.
Totally agree. Hey, the last thing I wanted to get to is next season, and it's a long ways away, and there's, the draft and free agency still to happen, so we can't pinpoint this yet, but you already said you're not holding them to the playoffs next year, or at least that can't be something they have to achieve for it to be a success. How do you already start to think about expectations, though? Because I do think that when the puck drops on opening night, for the first time in several years, there will be something this team has to achieve. I just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, I think, like I've kind of mentioned before, but I think you look to our southern rivals in the Ducks, right? Team who kind of got their rebuild started a couple years before the Sharks, and right this year they made that jump from being a bottom dwelling team, a rebuilding team, into a fun and frisky team with some of their young pieces, like Leo Carlson and McTavish, and the back end pieces that they have. I think that's my kind of expectation for the Sharks next year is, can you go from picking 1, 2, or 3 to like 8, 9, or 10 and be more competitive, right? And maybe you move out of the bottom of the Pacific standings, or just again, a more competitive team, and kind of set your place to then the 26-27 season, just like as the Ducks GM has just come out and said, like, the expectation is to make the playoffs next year. Can you start to kind of head in that same direction? So I would be surprised if this team, unless Mike Grier knocks it out of the park and whatever, if fingers crossed the Sharks get Schaefer and Schaefer is ready to be in the NHL and Dickinson makes his jump to the NHL, then you could kind of maybe start to talk me into like, okay, you have all these young pieces ready to kind of go. But I just trying to kind of be realistically, I think for the Sharks, just that 9-10 pick next season. That's where I'm kind of shooting for. And you're just not the worst team in the NHL. Can you just be like a middle of the pack, kind of maybe the NHL 500 team, I think is what we're shooting for next year.
The kids call it mid, I think.
The
JD.
mid. Can you just be a mid team next year, which is a huge improvement.
Well, Locked On Sharks does great work. JD, you're the brain behind it all and the backbone behind it all. So I appreciate your time, and thanks for doing this again. And we'll chat down the road, maybe after free agency. Then we can start to see things shape up. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Brodie.